Hi, this is my Antelope Edge Duo condenser modeling microphone. Recently, it started producing a lot of noise and hum. Something inside it broke. While it was humming, I thought it might be a ground loop issue. But later, it started making very volatile hissing noises. Then, I contacted Antelope support, and after a long conversation, we agreed that it was a hardware problem. In other words, a problem with the microphone. So I ordered replacement parts to repair it. Now I'll show you how I replaced the parts. Since I wasn't sure whether the problem was in the capsule or somewhere on the PCB boards and the replacement parts aren't too expensive, I'll replace both just to be sure. Remember to handle the capsule very carefully and never touch the diaphragm. Diaphragms are thinner than hair, so even the slightest touch, static discharge, etc. can destroy them. Hold the capsule only by its side edges. First, remove the 3 screws on the bottom of the microphone. Since I have never disassembled this microphone before, I am doing everything very carefully. I recommend taking a photo of how everything looks before removing anything. First, I disconnect the 3 thin cables that connect the capsule to the PCB boards. The PCB boards are not identical, so you need to remember which side has 2 cables and which has 1. I will use a soldering iron to disconnect the cables. Then I will continue by removing the screws that hold the PCB boards to the structural module. I will put the screws in one place so that I don't lose them. Everything is miniature, so if a screw falls off the table, you may have trouble finding it. After removing the screws, I will disconnect the cables that connect them to the XLR connector. There are 6 cables, 3 on each board. They are red, white, and black. Remember the order and where exactly they are connected. Since these cables are longer, you have 2 options. Either desolder them or cut them off. If you cut them off, do so in such a way that you shorten the cable as little as possible. I desoldered the first cable, but I cut the other 2 because I realized that I would have to re-strip the ends anyway. After stripping the ends, push them through the new board from the back, just as they were on the old board. Then solder all 3 cables from the front of the board. Repeat the same procedure also on the second board. Cut or unsolder the cables from the old board and solder them to the new one. As you can see, I have already cut all 3 cables on the second board. After soldering the cables, it's good to clean the connections, and if necessary, cut off the ends of the cables if they stick out too much from the PCB board. Now you need to insulate all the exposed new joints. Use electrical insulation varnish. You don't have to use exactly the same one as me. I used spray varnish, but I didn't spray it on the joints. Instead, I used a cotton swab and a plastic spoon, into which I squirted the required amount of varnish. It is important to insulate new connections with varnish to prevent possible short circuits in humid environments. Now I can screw both PCB boards to the microphone structure. The boards have been replaced with new ones, so now I can replace the capsule as well. I replaced the capsule last because it is very fragile to handle. Always keep in mind that you must not touch the capsule membranes. Replacing the capsule is more difficult from this point of view. After unscrewing the old capsule, I proceed as follows. I pull the cables through the plastic cover on the front and immediately screw the capsule to the capsule holder with 1 screw. Only when I no longer need to hold the capsule with my fingers do I continue shortening the cables. I shorten the cables to the required length. Be careful not to shorten them too much. Then I solder them to the same places as the cables on the old PCB board. I clean the new connections with isopropyl alcohol and use insulating varnish again as a top coat. I check that the new contacts are okay and put the microphone cover back on. That's it. At first, I was worried about replacing the parts, wondering if I would be able to do it. It's very delicate work. And the microphone is not exactly cheap, but I decided to go for it. I've read several posts on discussion forums about problems with this microphone. It was really frustrating because the Edge Duo otherwise offers really great emulations of famous microphones. I searched everywhere on the web for solutions, but apart from helpless complaints, I found nothing. Anyway, the job is done. The replacement took me about 3 hours, but I also filmed the whole process, so you will surely be able to do it in less time. Thank you for watching. See you next time.